Are you afraid to heed the first whispers of desire? Or does that voice fill you with an indescribable excitement? Perhaps this topic is one of the most intriguing, hidden, and captivating aspects of human psychology. In daily life, constantly overshadowed by social norms and personal boundaries, there lies an energy that is both very much alive and immensely powerful. Sometimes it comes in a glance, sometimes in a dream, and sometimes in a fantasy tucked away in the farthest corner of our minds. And we often ignore just how potent this force can be. Imagine pausing for a moment and asking yourself, which forbidden desire excites me the most, and why am I too afraid to admit it? It may seem like a simple question, but it's actually akin to opening a dark door. Once you step through, you encounter a mix of longing, passion, repressed urges, and perhaps a host of feelings you can't even confess to yourself. Those that society labels as shameful. At this point, it's natural to take a small step back. Picture a voice whispering,
"Are you ready?"
drawing you into the dark waters of desire. Fear and excitement are intertwined. Even trying to define desire can bring a certain uncertainty, a strange energy, like the feeling of biting into a forbidden fruit. On one hand, you want to be cautious so you don't get hurt. On the other, you're compelled to pursue that unknown allure. So how does this feeling develop within us? From a very young age, we experience it in various ways, which we then transform internally through cultural codes and family teachings. We'll lay out the ideas of Freud, Jung, and other psychoanalysts on the table. But first, can you recall those moments when you were startled by the whisper of your inner urge, walking down the street and suddenly locking eyes, a feeling creeping into you in the dead of night, or your heart racing a bit faster during a movie scene? These might be the first whispers of desire. Think about it. How seriously do you take those whispers? Or how much do you suppress them? Now let me ask you, have you ever found yourself so overwhelmed by this feeling that you didn't know what to do? The answer to this question might be the first hook of our journey. If your answer is yes, perhaps you are already ready to discover what place desire holds in your life. On the other hand, if you say, "No, I've never felt anything like that," maybe you have defense mechanisms strong enough to prevent your own repressed emotions from surfacing. Both sides are worth examining. Are you ready to explore? When we look at desire from a psychoanalytic perspective, it's almost impossible to proceed without referring to Sigmund Freud's theories. Freud examined the human mind by dividing it into layers: the id, the most primitive and unconscious layer, the ego above it, and the superego, representing social rules and moral values. Desire first presents itself as the voice of the id, primitive, uncensored, and direct. Think of a child proclaiming, "I want this, and I want it now." It represents sexual wants, libido, longing, and pleasure. Meanwhile, the ego tries to shape this urge in a way that aligns with reality. You have this urge right now, but you can't just fulfill it in front of everyone. The superego, in turn, shoulders the teachings of society and family and acts as a stricter overseer. This is wrong. It's shameful. It's forbidden. These three structures are in constant conflict within us. When the id surges forward with desire, the ego says, "Wait a minute, check your surroundings," while the superego sharply counters with, "Never." This conflict happens to all of us, often without our even realizing it, perhaps hundreds of times a day. For instance, let's say you lock eyes with someone incredibly attractive while walking down the street. The id whispers, "Show interest, talk, touch, feel." The ego rationalizes, "You don't know them yet. Maybe just say hello quietly or don't get involved at all." The superego says, "Such behavior in public isn't acceptable. Keep control." So what do you do in that situation? Who wins? Or is some compromise reached? Freud's theory of the mind tries to explain the psychological underpinnings of desire in exactly this way. According to Freud, repressing this drive can lead to various neuroses and internal conflicts over the long term. Repressed desire is pushed into the unconscious, where it continues to manifest in different guises. You might see traces of it in a burst of anger during the day, in a nightmare, or when you awaken from peculiar dreams. Have you ever felt inexplicably tense for no apparent reason? Think about it. Freud also introduced the concept of sublimation, the process of directing the energy of desire, libido, toward more socially acceptable or recognized creative, artistic, scientific, or social endeavors. In other words, channeling this powerful energy into something productive and creative. Some people become writers, funneling their desires into fictional worlds. Some turn to painting, transferring that intense feeling of desire onto the canvas. Others are musicians, weaving the vibrations of their passion into their compositions. Maybe you too have felt this energy from time to time and poured it into various creative processes. Have you ever tried converting your desire into an artistic or constructive activity? For those who say yes, maybe you noticed a deep passion taking hold of you when you took up music, painting, or writing. Which brings up another question. Do you allow your desire to be repressed, or do you seek ways to transform it? Carl Gustav Jung took the psychoanalytic tradition to another level. After Freud, Jung emphasized that desire is not purely a biological impulse, but is also closely related to the archetypal elements that make up our inner wholeness. According to Jung, there are universal symbols and archetypes in our collective unconscious that affect us all. One of these is the shadow archetype. The shadow houses the parts of our conscious identity that we reject, suppress, or refuse to acknowledge. Desire often becomes a critical component of the shadow, as social, religious, and moral norms, particularly those concerning sexual urges, are frequently restrictive. Thus, desire hides within the shadow, becoming a significant gateway in our journey to confront it. Another important Jungian concept is the anima and animus. The anima is the unconscious feminine side in a man, and the animus is the unconscious masculine side in a woman. The roots of desire are closely tied to how balanced or imbalanced these energies are. A man's anima shapes his desire through the feminine energy he connects with. Likewise, a woman's animus influences how she expresses desire through the masculine energy she engages. Have you ever wondered how your repressed masculine or feminine side affects your desire? Have you ever felt that you were too timid or overly bold in expressing desire? The problem may well lie in the balance of these inner energies. Mythological stories are full of gods and heroes experiencing passionate adventures, often representing the shadow. In Greek mythology, for example, the tale of Eros and Psyche demonstrates how longing and the soul, Psyche, can be intertwined with challenges that must be overcome, challenges relating to our own internal shadows. When Psyche dares to see Eros, she initiates a journey of true love and self-discovery. This is a metaphor for how desire and longing can be destructive, yet also transformative. Jung's approach sees desire not merely as something to be suppressed or controlled, but as an opportunity to achieve our own inner wholeness. Does confronting your shadow sound frightening? Yes, but without that confrontation, desire remains hidden in a dark cavern, liable to emerge uncontrollably at unexpected times. Are you ready to face your own shadow and listen to your anima or animus? Or does that thought scare you? Think about it. Desire is not limited to individual experiences. Let's take a look at how it appears in myth and popular culture. In mythological characters' lives, desire often leads to immense disasters or legendary transformations. In Greek mythology, Zeus is famous for his countless liaisons and passionate escapades, sometimes with mortals, sometimes with goddesses, and sometimes with the mythical creatures of the legendary world. Each of his relationships begins with a burst of passion, but the outcomes can affect the fate of the entire pantheon. Here, we see desire's destructive power, as well as how it can be a source of creativity. Many demigods came into existence through Zeus's various relationships. Beneath these myths lies the question, have you ever considered how uncontrolled desire can lead to chaos for you and those around you? Turning to the world of film, there are practically endless examples. In Fatal Attraction, the passionate relationship between the characters drives them to an irreversible point. A single moment of desire, a glance or a suggestive moment, can change lives forever. Similarly, in Black Swan, Nina's suppressed emotions, and especially her unrecognized sexual energy, lead her to reach the pinnacle of her art, but also cause a psychological breakdown. Here, desire serves as a source of extraordinary performance and creativity, yet carries the potential to push someone to the brink of imbalance. Have you ever watched and thought, what can being that passionate make a person do? In some films, scenes depicting sexuality go far beyond mere eroticism. These scenes are designed to reflect the turmoil in the characters' inner worlds. For instance, in Eyes Wide Shut, desire is presented as a power hidden behind secret masks, dark rooms, and rituals. The audience, along with the characters, enters what feels like a maze, a metaphorical representation of the characters' repressed desires, fears, and social facades. Again, the questions in this movie target you. Have you ever wanted something so much but were too scared to admit it, even to yourself? And have you ever questioned whether similar themes appear in your own life? Maybe the reflections of desire in your imagination are inviting you to pause and think. Ignoring the darker side of desire is a major delusion, especially if it's been repressed for a long time. It can become a volcano waiting to erupt. A desire that can't find expression in daily life and is constantly suppressed seeps out in unexpected ways, leading to all sorts of psychological issues. Freud referred to this as repressed sexuality, linking it to neurotic symptoms. When someone repeatedly represses their desires, they may experience ongoing inner restlessness, anger, anxiety, or even depression. Family and cultural codes play a big role in all this. If you grow up in a family environment where sexuality is strictly taboo, you naturally label the feeling of desire as shameful or sinful. This can root itself so deeply in the unconscious that, even in adulthood, you might struggle to acknowledge your own desires and physical needs. You might come across as cold, distant, or uneasy in relationships. Or perhaps you swing to the opposite extreme, complete liberation, only to fear losing control. Have you ever thought about your family's approach to desire? Are you aware of how that approach influences you now? Think about it. Another dark facet is guilt and shame. The person experiencing desire might sometimes think, I'm a bad person. I can't fit into society. This feeling is commonly encountered in environments with powerful social sexual norms and traditional moral values. Feeling dirty, worthless, or guilty simply for having sexual urges can severely damage your self-respect, harming mental well-being, and making it difficult to form intimate relationships. If I asked, are you ready to confront your own feelings of guilt or shame about your desires? Perhaps certain memories would surface in your mind. So, have you ever examined the source of your repressed urges or internal conflicts? Or is it easier to keep that door closed? How can such a powerful emotion be turned into something constructive? Freud's concept of sublimation is key here. Sublimation is the process of channeling sexual energy, libido, into more acceptable or socially recognized creative, intellectual, or artistic endeavors. Put another way, instead of repressing that intense desire, you give it an outlet. Some people write, expressing their desires through fictional characters. Others paint, using colors on a canvas to capture the intensity of desire. Some turn to music, weaving the vibrations of their passion into compositions. Perhaps you've also felt this kind of energy now and then, and directed it into some creative pursuit. Have you ever felt an overwhelming desire and decided to create something instead of just trying to hide it? Sublimation is about turning the life energy that desire provides into a positive, constructive force. This can fuel not just works of art, but also scientific discoveries and even social movements. Throughout history, many famous artists, writers, and thinkers have channeled their internal passion and longing into their works. The power of this creative energy can help a person mature within themselves and allow them to make a social impact. That's what we mean by the transformative side of desire. Of course, sublimation isn't a magical solution. For some, immersing themselves in art or science may not be enough to keep their desire in check, because the root of desire often involves bodily and emotional fulfillment. But sublimation, at least, avoids entirely repressing it by turning it into a source of creativity, building something, creating, sharing. These can help reveal the positive side of desire. Have you discovered a space where you can transform your own desire? Or are you still thinking, this feeling will only harm me, and keeping it hidden? Beyond this theoretical framework, it's important to look at how we can handle desire in everyday life, because even in ordinary moments, a small spark can trigger it, and before we know it, it can influence our thoughts and actions. This is where practical steps come into play. First of all, cultivating awareness is extremely helpful in recognizing desire. Throughout the day, observe the signals your body gives you. When does your heart race? Which thoughts coincide with the rise of desire? Ask yourself, what's going on in my body right now? Which sensations have intensified? How is my breathing? It's essential to maintain an observer's perspective rather than a judgmental one. Sometimes a smell, a sound, or an image can trigger desire. Recognizing these triggers allows you to manage them more consciously and learn to direct them rather than repress them. For example, a particular style of music might evoke a strong emotional response in some people, or a certain movie scene. Its colors, setting, or ambiance might do the same. What are your triggers? Desire, when left entirely unchecked, can sometimes create imbalances. This is especially true if it violates social or personal boundaries. Setting and respecting your own limits and those of others helps you reveal the healthy side of desire. This is also the foundation of a respectful relationship dynamic. Exploring your inner world by writing can bring to the surface many feelings that have been pushed into your unconscious. Keeping a private, honest journal about your thoughts on desire can later help you look back and see patterns. Which triggers were active? What emotional fluctuations did you experience? And how can you make more conscious decisions moving forward? Sometimes seeking professional help is crucial. Desire can be so powerful that a person may feel helpless or guilty. Psychological support, particularly sexual therapy or psychoanalytic therapy, can help you become freer and restructure these feelings. Remember, seeking help is not a weakness. It's a sign of awareness and courage. As you can see, practical steps encourage viewing desire not as an enemy, but as a traveling companion. This companion can bring you valuable inspiration, excitement, and vitality. But if you fail to recognize it or leave it uncontrolled, it can turn into a storm. Are you ready to embrace it safely? When properly understood and managed, desire can grant you tremendous vitality, creativity, and self-confidence. Once you begin exploring yourself and expressing your impulses in a constructive way, you can undergo a real transformation. This transformation affects other areas of life as well. For instance, you might become more driven in your career, more genuine in your social circle, and more open in communication. Being at peace with your own desires, body, and emotions adds an integrated sense of self-confidence to your character. On the other hand, Let's not forget that desire can be tremendously destructive in relationships, especially in partnerships where fidelity matters. Unconscious desire can lead to infidelity, jealousy, manipulation, and a host of negative emotions and behaviors. This doesn't just affect the two people in the relationship. If children are involved, it impacts the whole family, the social circle, and even work life. The worst of it might be losing self-respect, families broken for a single moment of passion, friendships lost, and trust vanishing. Have you ever seen or maybe even experienced something like that? Think about it. Desire is much like a powerful fire. It both warms and burns. A simple example: on a film set, the chemistry arising from attraction between co-stars can greatly enrich the atmosphere. Yet, if left uncontrolled, it can damage both professional and personal lives. Here's where the personal gain we've been talking about comes in. If you recognize your desire and learn to channel it, you can bring dynamic energy and passion into your life. By allowing your creativity to flourish, you can build more fulfilling relationships, socially and emotionally. But you must know how to manage that fire. Do you want to infuse your life with passion and excitement? Or do you still see desire as a dangerous enemy? Maybe everything we've discussed feels very theoretical. Let's illustrate this with a small hypothetical example. Let's say we have a character named Marlene. She was raised in a family that strictly suppressed sexuality. The word sex was never spoken openly at home and was always met with shame. Growing up, Marlene became increasingly curious about her body, while also developing deeper feelings of guilt. When she started her first serious relationship in college, she still couldn't openly talk about desire. Over time, this led to a coldness and distance in her relationships. While her partner longed for intimacy, she lived in constant fear. What if they misunderstand me? What if I'm judged? Years pass, and Marlene starts her career. Sometimes, the repressed desire bubbles up intensely in her dreams, or bursts out uncontrollably at moments she can't predict. She might wake up in the middle of the night with her heart racing, only to dismiss it in the morning. This cycle continues, and she moves through life like a shadow, never truly knowing her body or her needs. Then one day, a friend suggests she see a psychologist. In therapy, she learns that desire is actually a natural human feeling, and that she just needs proper avenues for expression. Think about it. Maybe you're in the same cycle? If I asked you that, how would you feel? A slow transformation begins in Marlene's life. She starts with small exercises to reconnect with her body. Then she discovers sublimation. She takes up painting, and on the canvas, the vibrant colors reflect the stirrings of her desires. Gradually, she becomes more open to emotional intimacy and physical touch. She defines her own boundaries, respects those of her partner, and ultimately reaches a point where she can freely accept her desire. Through this process, her relationships grow deeper and more sincere. Are you ready to let your own transformation begin? Maybe some of you are thinking, yes, I'm ready. Have you ever considered how suppressed desire affects you in your own story? And which transformations could set you free? Desire is part of being human. Rather than ignoring it, leaving it in the shadows, or letting it run wild, it's possible to understand and manage it. At this stage, here are a few proposals and a final perspective. Learn about desire. Read, research, educate yourself. From psychoanalytic theories to Jung's concept of the shadow, gaining knowledge can open new doors to self-understanding. When you ask, why do I feel this way? The information you've gathered can guide you. Accept that desire is normal and natural. This is the first step in fighting guilt and shame. Embracing this truth helps you say, I'm worthy. There's nothing shameful about my desires, and fosters self-love. If you're in a relationship, don't be afraid to talk about desire with your partner. Open and honest communication keeps both closeness and personal power in balance. Being candid about your expectations, fears, and wants strengthens a relationship. Whether it's psychotherapy, sexual therapy, or personal development seminars, professional support can be incredibly helpful in reshaping your relationship with desire. Working with an expert mirrors your unconscious processes back to you and can accelerate your transformation. Normalizing desire rather than viewing it as taboo can help us build a healthier society. Any urge that can't be openly expressed risks turning toxic. In our education system, families, media, and the art world, adopting a more thoughtful and respectful perspective on sexuality is the key to social progress. From a universal standpoint, desire affects not only individual identities, but also the collective psyche of humanity. Repressed urges can burst forth in ways that cause social upheaval or even war, while also shaping artistic creations. If we can channel this energy positively, humanity could build a more creative, productive, and peaceful world. Finally, I have some questions for you, ones that can spark a genuine inner journey. Have you ever publicly defended your own desire? Have you ever felt guilty for feeling something completely natural? Think about it. What are you waiting for to begin your own transformation? Making peace with desire, accepting it, and integrating it isn't just a personal gain. It also lightens the collective unconscious for humanity as a whole. When you stop blaming your wants and start trying to understand them, you contribute to a broader collective transformation. This process could open new doors for you, a more passionate life, more honest relationships, and a deeper sense of self. Final hook. After watching this video, will you summon the courage to look deeper into your inner world? Or will you shut the door again and continue where you left off? Yes, dear viewers, we have explored the topic of desire through a psychoanalytic journey guided by Freud and Jung, spanning everything from mythology to film. Where you place your own story in these narratives is up to you. Our main goal has been to move you from being passive watchers to active thinkers and explorers. If this journey has excited you, please share your thoughts in the comments. By responding to the questions we've asked throughout this text, expressing yourself, and perhaps sharing examples from your own life, you might be taking the first step toward a pivotal turning point. Are you ready to take action? If you like this video, you can support us by hitting the like button. Also, by subscribing and turning on notifications, you'll help ensure we can continue making content like this. Remember, desire is a fire hidden inside you, and it's entirely in your hands whether to extinguish or stoke it. But don't forget, it can also be your guide. Think about it. I invite you to reflect, question yourself, and, most importantly, transform. Thank you, and see you in the next video. After this video, will you dare to listen for the next whisper of desire?